A nun was found brutally murdered inside a locked convent in St. Augustine, Florida. There were signs of a violent struggle, and a chilling message written in blood on the wall. But here's the terrifying part: no one had entered, and no one had left the building that night. Which meant the killer was still inside, and the truth was far worse than anyone imagined. In the quiet hills outside St. Augustine, Florida, there stood a convent that locals rarely talked about after sunset. The Sisters of Mercy Convent had been there for nearly a century. White walls, tall windows, and a bell tower that echoed across the sleepy town every evening. But in October 1997, the bell rang at a time it never should have. At 2:17 a.m., police received a terrified call from inside the convent. The voice on the other end was shaking so badly the dispatcher could barely understand her. A nun was dead. When officers arrived, they expected a simple explanation, perhaps an accident, maybe a medical emergency. What they found instead turned the quiet convent into the center of one of the most disturbing investigations the town had ever seen. The victim was Sister Maria Caldwell, a beloved nun known for her kindness and strict devotion. But the scene in her room suggested something far darker than anyone imagined. There were signs of a struggle, the window was open, and something written on the wall that investigators would later call a message meant to terrify. But the most chilling discovery: everyone inside the convent claimed no one entered, and no one left. So if the killer wasn't outside, who was inside the convent that night? The night of October 14th, 1997, began like every other quiet evening in St. Augustine, Florida. The streets were nearly empty, the air carried the smell of the nearby ocean, and the lights inside the Sisters of Mercy Convent had long gone dark. Inside the old building, the nuns followed a strict routine. By 9 p.m., prayers were finished. By 10 p.m., the halls were silent. Nothing unusual, until 2:17 a.m. At the local police station, Officer Daniel Harper had just started the quietest part of his shift when the dispatcher suddenly waved him over. The caller was panicking. A terrified voice whispered, "Please, you need to come. Sister Maria, something happened." The call came from Sister Agnes Whitmore, one of the senior nuns living in the convent. Within minutes, Harper and his partner were speeding toward the towering white building on the edge of town. When they arrived, the massive wooden doors were already open. Several nuns stood in the hallway, pale and trembling. At the end of the corridor was Sister Maria Caldwell's room. The door was slightly open, and inside, the officers saw something that instantly turned a quiet convent into a crime scene. Officer Daniel Harper slowly pushed open the door to Sister Maria Caldwell's room. The smell hit first. A sharp metallic scent that every police officer instantly recognizes. Blood. The small bedroom inside the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Augustine, Florida looked like it had been turned upside down. The wooden chair was knocked over. The bedside table had been dragged across the floor. A lamp lay shattered near the wall. And on the floor beside the bed, Sister Maria's body. The 42-year-old nun lay on her side, her rosary beads scattered across the wooden floor like broken glass. Her habit was torn, and her hands were clenched tightly, as if she had fought desperately before the end. But something else made Harper freeze. On the wall above the bed, written in thick red letters, was a message. 3 words. She knew too much. For a moment, the room went completely silent. Officer Harper quickly stepped forward, checking for any sign of life. There was none. But what confused investigators the most was something far more disturbing. The convent had only one entrance, and it was locked from the inside, which meant the killer had either broken in or had been living inside the convent all along. By sunrise, the quiet grounds of the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Augustine, Florida were crawling with police cars. Detectives quickly sealed off the building. No one was allowed to leave. Inside the convent were 12 nuns, and every single one of them had been inside the building the entire night. which meant something investigators didn't want to believe. The killer had to be one of them. Detective Laura Bennett, a veteran investigator known for handling difficult homicide cases, took control of the scene. She began interviewing the nuns one by one inside the convent's small prayer hall. Most of them were terrified. Several were crying. And all of them claimed the same thing. They had gone to sleep after evening prayers and heard nothing until Sister Agnes Whitmore discovered the body shortly before calling police. But when detectives searched Sister Maria Caldwell's room again, they found something strange hidden beneath the bed. A small locked wooden box. Inside it were several folded letters and a notebook filled with handwritten notes. At first glance, they looked like private journal entries. But as Detective Bennett began reading them, her expression slowly changed. Because the pages suggested something shocking. Sister Maria had been secretly investigating someone inside the convent. And whoever it was, she believed they were dangerous. Detective Laura Bennett sat at a small wooden desk inside the convent office, slowly turning the fragile pages of Sister Maria Caldwell's notebook. Each page was dated. Each entry written carefully, almost like evidence being recorded. The notes began about 3 months before the murder inside the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Augustine, Florida. At first, the entries seemed harmless, simple observations about daily life in the convent. But then the tone changed. One entry read, "Something is wrong here. I hear footsteps in the hall long after lights out. Someone is awake when they should not be." Another entry, written 2 weeks later, was even more disturbing. "I saw her tonight. She was leaving the chapel past midnight. When she noticed me, she pretended to be praying, but there was something in her hands she quickly hid." Detective Bennett frowned. The name mentioned in the margin was partially smudged, but still readable. Sister Eleanor Briggs. One of the quietest nuns in the convent. Known by the others as shy and deeply religious. But the final entry in the journal sent a chill down Bennett's spine. "If anything happens to me, it is because I discovered what Sister Eleanor is hiding." The problem. When detectives went looking for Sister Eleanor Briggs, they couldn't find her anywhere in the building. The moment detectives realized Sister Eleanor Briggs was missing, tension spread through the Sisters of Mercy Convent like wildfire. Detective Laura Bennett immediately ordered officers to search every corner of the building in St. Augustine, Florida. The convent wasn't small. There were narrow hallways, storage rooms, a library, a basement, and even an old attic that hadn't been used in years. But after nearly an hour of searching, there was no sign of Sister Eleanor. The other nuns were stunned. Several insisted that Eleanor had been present during evening prayers the night before. One nun remembered seeing her quietly walk toward the dormitory hallway around 9:30 p.m. After that, no one could say where she went. Detectives decided to search her room next. At first glance, the space looked perfectly normal. Tidy bed, folded clothes, a wooden cross on the wall. But then Officer Daniel Harper noticed something strange. One of the floorboards beside the bed looked slightly raised. When investigators pried it open, they discovered a hidden compartment underneath. Inside was a small black bag. And when Bennett opened it, she felt her stomach drop. Because inside the bag were several items that had no place inside a convent. A hunting knife, a pair of gloves, and a photograph of Sister Maria Caldwell. The discovery in Sister Eleanor Briggs' room turned the quiet investigation into a full manhunt inside the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Augustine, Florida. Detective Laura Bennett knew one thing for certain. If Eleanor had committed the murder, she couldn't have gone far. The convent had been locked from the inside all night. That meant she was either still hiding inside, or there was another way out no one knew about. Officers began searching the building again, this time more carefully. Every closet, every storage room, every hidden corner. Nearly 2 hours passed with nothing. Then Officer Daniel Harper noticed something strange in the hallway leading to the convent's old storage basement. The door was slightly open. According to the nuns, that door was always kept locked. Harper slowly pushed it open. The staircase below was dark, completely silent. But halfway down the steps, something caught the beam of his flashlight. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading deeper into the basement. Harper called for backup before continuing down the stairs. When officers reached the bottom, they discovered something none of the nuns had mentioned before. At the far end of the basement wall, there was another door. Old, rusty, and slightly open. Behind it was a hidden tunnel leading out of the convent. And someone had recently used it. The hidden tunnel beneath the Sisters of Mercy convent stunned investigators. None of the nuns claimed to know it even existed. Detective Laura Bennett and several officers followed the narrow passage carefully as it stretched beneath the ground outside St. Augustine, Florida. The air inside the tunnel was damp and cold. Dirt walls pressed tightly on both sides, and the smell of mold filled the space. Someone had definitely been using it. Fresh dirt marks lined the ground, and the same footprints Officer Daniel Harper had spotted in the basement continued forward. After nearly 10 minutes of walking, the tunnel finally opened into a small clearing deep in the woods behind the convent. Sunlight filtered through the trees. At first, everything seemed quiet. Then Harper's flashlight landed on something half buried in the dirt. A wooden shovel. Nearby, the ground looked recently disturbed. Detective Bennett felt a chill run down her spine. "Start digging," she ordered. Within minutes, officers uncovered something wrapped in an old blanket. When they pulled it free, everyone froze. It wasn't Sister Eleanor. It was the body of another woman. And around her neck was a necklace identifying her as another nun from the convent, one who had supposedly left the order years ago. When investigators uncovered the body in the woods behind the Sisters of Mercy convent, the case took a far darker turn. Detective Laura Bennett immediately asked the remaining nuns a simple question. "Who is she?" The moment the blanket was removed, several of them gasped. One elderly nun began trembling. The dead woman was Sister Helen Carter. According to the convent's records in St. Augustine, Florida, Sister Helen had left the convent 6 years earlier to live with family. That was the official story. But now her body had been discovered buried in the woods behind the building. Which meant something chilling. She never actually left. Detectives rushed to check the convent's old records and discovered something suspicious. The paperwork confirming Helen's departure had been signed by only one person. Sister Eleanor Briggs. Suddenly, the pieces started falling into place. If Eleanor had falsified the records, it meant she may have been hiding something terrible inside the convent for years. Something Sister Maria Caldwell had apparently begun to uncover. But before investigators could piece together the full truth, Officer Daniel Harper received a call over his radio. Someone had been spotted walking alone on a rural road just outside town. A woman wearing a nun's habit. And she was heading straight toward the highway leaving St. Augustine. The radio call came through just after noon. A highway patrol officer outside St. Augustine, Florida reported seeing a lone woman walking along a quiet rural road. She was dressed in a nun's habit. Detective Laura Bennett didn't hesitate. "That's her," she said. "It has to be Sister Eleanor Briggs." Within minutes, police vehicles rushed toward the location. The road led toward a small highway connecting several nearby towns, and if Eleanor reached it, she could disappear quickly. Officer Daniel Harper arrived first. In the distance, he saw her. A lone figure walking calmly along the shoulder of the road, her dark habit moving in the wind. She didn't look panicked. She didn't look like someone running. She looked peaceful. Harper stepped out of his cruiser. "Sister Eleanor," he shouted. The woman slowly turned around. For a moment, their eyes met. Then something strange happened. Instead of running, Eleanor smiled. A quiet, unsettling smile. As more police cars arrived, she calmly raised her hands. "I knew you would find me," she said softly. Detective Bennett stepped forward. "There are 2 dead nuns," she said. "You're going to explain everything." Eleanor's smile didn't fade. "You're wrong," she whispered. "There are more than 2. Police brought Sister Eleanor Briggs back to the Sisters of Mercy Convent under heavy guard in St. Augustine, Florida. Detective Laura Bennett sat across from her in a small interview room. "You said there were more," Bennett began. "More than 2 victims. What did you mean?" For a moment, Eleanor said nothing. Then she leaned forward and spoke quietly. "You're looking in the wrong place." Bennett frowned. "Then where should we look?" Eleanor's answer sent a chill through the room. "Under the chapel." Within an hour, investigators forced open a section of old flooring beneath the convent's chapel. What they discovered shocked even the most experienced officers. Hidden beneath the building was a sealed underground chamber. Inside were several small graves. Old ones. Much older than Sister Maria Caldwell or Sister Helen Carter. Records later revealed that decades earlier, multiple young women had come to the convent seeking refuge, and had mysteriously disappeared. Eleanor finally confessed. She claimed she had been protecting the secret of the convent for years. But when Sister Maria Caldwell began uncovering the truth, Eleanor believed she had no choice but to silence her. The quiet convent in St. Augustine would never be the same again. The quiet halls of the Sisters of Mercy Convent in St. Augustine, Florida would never sound the same again. For nearly a century, the building had been seen as a place of prayer, safety, and refuge. A place where people believed darkness could never truly enter. But the investigation proved something far more disturbing. Sometimes, the darkness isn't outside the walls. Sometimes, it's already inside. The confession of Sister Eleanor Briggs shocked the entire community. What began as the murder of Sister Maria Caldwell slowly unraveled into a secret buried beneath the convent for decades. Hidden graves, disappearing women, and a truth that had been carefully protected in silence for years. Locals in St. Augustine still talk about the case today. Some say the convent should have been torn down. Others believe the building should remain standing, as a reminder of what happened there. Because the scariest part of the story isn't the murder. It's the question investigators could never fully answer. How many secrets were buried there before anyone started asking questions? And if Sister Maria Caldwell had stayed silent, would anyone have ever discovered the truth? If you want to hear more dark and disturbing cases like this, make sure you follow for the next true crime story.